welcome to It's a Serious Matter. I am your host, Erica Hall. We have a very special guest, and I can't wait to introduce her to you. Listen, none other than our own Kyra Harris Bolden is here with us today, the Michigan Supreme Court Justice. Welcome, Justice Kyra.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for agreeing to do this. And thank you for allowing us to share this platform with you. Our goal is to encourage and engage voters. And we just knew that bringing you on today would help us to do that. And so we're just so excited to have you on It's a Serious Matter. Today's episode is brought to you by the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Voter Engagement Campaign, aka Votes, the Eta Iota Omega chapter out of Inkster, Michigan. Our mission is to empower you with the information and the tools that you need to vote, to make your vote make a difference, because as we say, your vote is your voice. Voting, it's a serious matter. And today, this special episode is featuring an incredible guest, the Michigan Supreme Court Justice Kyra Harris Bolden. We're excited to explore her personal and professional journey, her path to the Supreme Court, and hear her inspiring story. Together today, we're just going to have a discussion where she can share her insights on leadership, perseverance, and the importance of civic engagement. So, how about we get started with our conversation today? Thank you so much for giving us this time. But look, let's just start with your upbringing. I just couldn't wait to ask you this question because my maiden name is Bolden, and I know there's not a whole lot of us, right, in Michigan, and so I have to ask you, could you share with us, your upbringing, how your family and community experience shaped this journey into law and public service?
Yes, thank you so much for playing our theme song. So Justice for Generations song, which you have played, is actually sung by the Detroit Youth Choir. And they were very, very excited to be able to record this original song. And the producer is D. Slate. And I went to high school with him, and he actually produced their newest album. And so I keep it in the Michigan family, and I'm so proud of that. So thank you for playing it. So Bolden is my married name, but I cannot tell you how many times people have come to me and said, the Flint Boldens, do you know? And I was not endorsed in Southfield because I was a state representative. And there were like 20 Boldens. And I know I was related to about 5. Yes. But I would, knock on the door and I would say, "Hey, family." So I claim all the Bolden. Yes.
Good. Well, welcome. And Urena Johnson is on with us as well. And we are so excited to have you here. Thank you for jumping on. Urena, how are you doing?
I am good. Welcome, Justice Bolden. Thank you so much for coming on today and just sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience with us and just talking about the serious matter of getting out to vote. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing that information.
Yes, well, thank you for having me.
Yes, as a fellow attorney and understanding the law and understanding how decisions that justices make is so important. Can you tell us just a little bit about your journey to becoming a part of the Supreme Court of Michigan?
Yes. So I'm a lifelong resident of Michigan, and I grew up in Southfield, where I was an Akatine, and then I went to Grand Valley State University, where I was initiated into Nu Theta chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Yes.
Yes, and so I have my pink and green behind me. And I went to the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law for law school. So again, all of my education has been in Michigan. Once I was barred, I did court-appointed criminal defense work. I was also judicial law clerk to the Honorable Judge John A. Murphy, who's the longest serving Black judge in the state of Michigan's history. And so I received great mentorship and friendship there. I then was a civil litigation attorney for Lewis and Monday, which is one of the
Oh
oldest and
yeah.
largest
Mhm.
Black-owned law firms in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and received excellent training and mentorship there. And I think what maybe Irina has been thinking. Sometimes you think, who is making the laws around here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like every attorney goes through that phase.
Mhm.
Because you see the way that the law affects your clients and your community. And so I decided to run for the Michigan House of Representatives in 2018. I was successful in that, my first time running for office. And I served 2 terms in the Michigan House of Representatives, was able to get 5 bills passed into law focusing on criminal justice reform. Yes, was a feat.
So important.
Yes, but focus my work on criminal justice reform and protecting survivors of sexual violence.
Mm-hmm.
And in June of 2021, a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, asked me to run for Michigan Supreme Court, and I declined at that time. I wanted to expand my family, and I actually did get pregnant. And so I'm in my first trimester, and people keep asking me, are you running for Michigan Supreme Court? And I'm just saying, no, I'm not running. And
Right.
finally had to tell people I was pregnant because I got so many questions. And those same people said, once the information about me being pregnant spread, they said, we heard you're pregnant, still want you to run for Michigan Supreme Court.
What do you do?
You can do it.
Yes, I can understand that. Yeah. Balancing personal and professional life, right?
Exactly. And so not only, was I pregnant and about to run a statewide campaign, statewide campaign. You know how big the state of Michigan is.
Yes.
It's 8 hours from the top to the bottom,
To the
right?
bottom, yeah.
But I still had a full-time job in the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
And, all of that was nerve-wracking, right? But I kept thinking about my daughter. And I kept thinking about the type of Michigan I want her to grow up in. And do I want her to get to her adulthood before there's a Black woman on the Michigan Supreme Court? And I knew that if I didn't try, then the opportunity might be lost to other Black women. And so I decided to run, and lost the race by 2 percentage points, so roughly 200,000 votes across the state of Michigan. And I would just like to say there was a 1 million vote drop off between the governor's race and the nonpartisan section of the ballot. So in my mind, I like to think that 200,000 of those drop offs were mine, but God had other plans.
Yeah.
A vacancy became available on the Michigan Supreme Court, and Governor Gretchen Whitmer appointed me. So that is how I got to the
God had other plans. Yes. And how impressive to be able to balance all of that and be so inspiring. So how have you navigated those challenges, and what advice would you have for others trying to balance personal life with professional goals, understanding that sometimes being inspirational or being inspiring is on your shoulders?
Absolutely. And I will tell you that, when in the first, 5-6 months of my daughter's life, I did not understand balance. It was work, and it was when I came home, it was mommy, I was on night duties, and I really poured from an empty cup, so to speak. But I will say, through my village and honestly therapy, and really taking the word balance out of my vocabulary and replacing it with juggling, because you have to know that when one ball is in the air, something else is falling. The key is to not let anything drop, right. But it has allowed me the permission to be present in the space that I'm in. And so when I am working, I am locked into work. And when I'm with my family, I'm locked into that.
With your family. You're getting good at it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm better. If anybody has any tips or tricks, I am willing to accept it, because it's a lot. It really is a lot. But learning to manage and also outsourcing. I know that not everybody has the means to do it, but I have been okay now with just asking for help. Like I need help.
For help,
and the things that I can outsource, I do outsource, and not feeling guilt from that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. I would say that's the key. Knowing when to ask for help. That's good.
Yes, and I think learning to know, I've learned to figure out that just because I can do something doesn't mean I should do it. And knowing when to do things, and when is the proper season and when it's not the right season. Like you were talking about the opportunities, and just understanding that season and just kind of making sure we're navigating during that time,
Yeah, she had to prioritize. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But we know this season has been filled with a lot of different things going on, as far as one key thing that we have been kind of focusing on is just providing education to the community concerning just voting and just getting out there to vote, and understanding what a fundamental right that is to vote. And you mentioned something about the nonpartisan section of the ballot, and how you feel like it was overlooked. It was a percentage of that overlooked. Can you share with us about why it's important to look at the entire ballot and to really be an informed voter when you do vote?
Yeah, so you go to your nonpartisan section, and that's where you have your judges, which is a third co-equal branch of government. And particularly for Black people, who are the most justice impacted community, I think it's imperative that we vote in the nonpartisan section for our judges. And I would say too, in some other states, people don't have the opportunity to vote for their judges. In some states, all of their judges are appointed by the governor, or there are different processes, but we have the opportunity to vote for the people that are presiding over cases that may determine the course of our lives, right? That do determine the course of our lives, to be honest. And I can say from the spot sitting in the Michigan Supreme Court, we handle every issue that might be litigated, from termination of parental rights to whether someone was wrongly convicted, to election issues, to taxes, to zoning ordinances, right? Everyday issues that affect Michiganders. And so if you're for the people that are already there, why not vote for the third branch of government that's a check and balance on the legislature in the governor's office, right? Why not? And for people that are on the fence about voting, someone is going to have that job. Would you rather have a say or not have a say? Somebody's going to have a job.
Yes, it's so important. Yes.
So you might as well have a hand in selecting that representation, because remember, we're paid for with tax dollars. And someone's going to be in that role whether or not you vote. And so if 2 people vote or 3 people vote, whoever those people vote for is going to have the job. So taking yourself out of the equation is not helpful. The only way to see change in the community is to get in the game and to vote the entire ballot every single time.
Do our part. And you mentioned that before joining the Michigan Supreme Court, you served in the Michigan House of Representatives. What were some of the key contributions, that making that connection or initiatives during your time there, and how has that experience shaped your judicial perspective?
So that's a lot. a lot to answer. So when I was in the legislature, what you must understand is that billions of dollars, billions with a B, are being appropriated to different things. Being appropriated to communities, being appropriated to the school aid fund, being appropriated to businesses, what have you. Your representation at the table has the greatest impact on what resources come back to your community. So when I was in the Michigan House, I was able one year to get over $1 million back to the community, mostly for roads and special projects. You know, these things don't really happen in a vacuum, right? And you can complain, but if there's no one at the table that really cares about your concerns, then nothing is going to happen.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I think it's important. From my other, as far as getting bills passed into law, you're talking about things that I passed, the medically frail prison reform package. You're talking about an amendment to the Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act.
Okay.
And you're talking about the Address Confidentiality Act that shields a survivor of sexual violence is addressed with the Attorney General's office so that their abuser cannot find them and reoffend. You know, these are critical, important issues. And these were bills that introduced and were passed during my time. So that means that these weren't on the books prior to my service, right?
Yeah.
And it takes someone championing these very important things to make sure that they get done. And it may take years. It may not take, 2 years. It may take 10 years, right?
Yeah.
To get things done. As far as how that experience informs my judicial perspective, I know how the sausage is made. And so, I think that's very helpful because one of the most important questions we have to answer in the judiciary is statutory interpretation. What was the legislature thinking when they enacted that law that informs us to interpret the law in the correct manner? That's the number one question, right? And so having been a lawmaker, I think it has informed me incredibly into the process of what the legislature or a lawmaker might be thinking when a particular law was enacted. And so I'm so fortunate to have had that experience and to be able to bring that experience to the table.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I don't think people understand that importance of bridging those the gaps between the making of the law and what people do in the legislature, and then the interpretation of the law as far as being a justice. But you've combined both of those things and brings those things to the Michigan Supreme Court. Before we wrap up, can you tell our listeners where they can find out more information about you and your work in the community?
Of course. And so I'll direct you to several different places because I believe in covering all my bases. The first place is social media. So I have a personal and a campaign page. My personal is Kyra H. Bolden on all social media platforms. And my campaign handle is Bolden for Justice. On Facebook, it might be Kyra Harris Bolden for Justice, but you'll find it. So follow me on social media. See where I'm going in the state of Michigan, see what events I'm attending, and see who's trying to earn your vote.
Yes.
The other place you may go is boldenforjustice.com. That is my personal website. Another place you can go is Bolden and Thomas, which is a joint website with myself and my running mate, Kimberly Ann Thomas. And you could also go to the Michigan Supreme Court website to review any of the opinions or decisions that I've made.
Oh, that's great.
And that's important, because I think that a lot of people need to understand, even like you said, the opinions that affect everyday people. You are involved and right there in the trenches. So I think people need to understand what legislation has come before you all and what could possibly come before you all over the next 4 years as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you mentioned that when we first started, we were talking about the importance of voting. One of the reasons we started this, or we're doing this platform, we're doing this podcast, is because we as an organization want to do our part and encourage voting. Our focus has been voter engagement and voter education, breaking through all of the misinformation and disinformation, and just us not knowing or having a grasp of how important it is, not just the presidential election, but all of the other seats and positions that direct directly affect our lives and even being active in shaping policy. And so before you go, and if we've missed anything as far as sharing voter education, voter engagement, can you speak to the importance of, you mentioned a phrase earlier, how our community is mostly affected by justices. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, our community is the most justice impacted community, right?
Justice impacted,
You
yes.
know,
Okay.
many Black people are the most justice impacted
Yeah.
individuals in our community, and so to give up that right to be heard and who's making those decisions over our lives, we just can't afford to do that. We just can't. I mean, aside from the fact that people have literally died for our right to vote, if you're thinking on an individual level, who do you want to go before should you find yourself to be justice impacted? And you should want a hand in that. If you only care about your family, think about generations that we will never be able to see, touch, or hear. The decisions that we make today will affect them, right?
Yes.
And so, you know, bring it back down to a micro level of how these positions impact people, because I think a lot of people think, you know, well, I'm not going to find myself in the judicial system, so, you know, I don't need to vote in that section. And sometimes it's just they don't know who to vote for and they don't want to make a wrong decision.
Yeah.
But we have, you know, so many resources at our disposal. Like I said, I have social media. I have 2 websites. I have, you know, a government website. Just take the time to Google each person and make sure that they're the person that you want to vote for. But don't give up that right to vote.
Yeah.
And I think that people also need to understand that you know, the Michigan Supreme Court pretty much, you know, sets the precedents for the laws in Michigan. You know, that's what lawyers are looking at. We're looking at the precedents of the Michigan Supreme Court to determine if your case is going to be valid or not, if you do have a case or not. So it's very important. What you all do is very important. And I think making sure that the individual voter understands the importance of that is something that we need to make sure that is out there to every Michigander, like you said, that they understand the importance of how the law affects them.
100%. And I said, you know, we're the most justice impacted, and that can be interpreted as criminally. But you have to think about, we're deciding car accident cases, slip and falls.
Yes.
And when you say we set a precedent, we might be determining whether someone can sue in a particular situation at all, under a certain set of facts, right? Whether the government owes you money in a particular situation. And so a lot of people don't think about these things until they're actually, you know, justice impacted. But I will say, like you said, Irina, our decisions set a precedent, and there are precedents that Michiganders must abide by, and that will be in place unless or until there is a different court that, you know, will overturn our prior decision, which doesn't happen that often because of stare decisis. And so, and what that is, it gives deference to previous courts in their decision making. So I say all that to say, and when you play the song Justice for Generations, it reminds me every single time that we're not making decisions just for the people of today. They literally has generational consequences. When I was running in 2022, a usual term of a Michigan Supreme Court justice is 8 years. And when I was running, you know, because you have to bring it in context for people, and I was pregnant, and I said, look, if I were to serve 2 terms on the Michigan Supreme Court, my daughter would almost be at voting age herself. So you have to think about what that means, you know, in terms of time. You're talking about many decisions being made in those years. And then you're talking about a baby going, you know, from a baby to an adult. And all of those decisions being made in that period of time. So again, it's incredibly important. And I sit at the table, I see the decisions being made, I hear the conversations. And it's really important. I will say that.
Yeah, we definitely have to think about that we're making decisions not just for us that are going to directly impact us, but for generations to come. I think that puts a weight of responsibility upon us today. And so that's why we want to make sure that people feel the responsibility. And so, Justice Bolden, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your powerful story, sharing your journey. It's an inspiration to us all. Even how you said that after 2 terms, your daughter will almost be voting age. So that means that this is what we have to do for our children to make sure that they are educated, that they know that there's no question about whether or not you're going to vote. It's just a matter of who you're going to vote for, making sure that they're educated. So we just want to remind everyone that if you have not registered to vote, you can still register by mail or online through October 21st, 2024, and in person through Election Day. Early voting begins October 26th and goes all the way through November 3rd. That's early voting. And remember, the big day, Election Day, is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to add, Sora or Urena, before we go?
No, just thank you again, Justice Bolden, for just having this important conversation with our audience. And like Sora Erica stated, we are encouraging all those to get out and vote. We've tried to eliminate any barriers that are in place and give you as much information as possible, the right information as possible, in order to vote and making sure you're exercising that right.
Yes, and if I could, just a closing argument too, I think I forgot to mention, the nonpartisan section is not captured with straight ticket voting. The nonpartisan section is not captured by straight ticket voting. I learned my lesson in 2022 that a lot of people think it's all incorporated. You have to bubble in your judges, school board members, everything separately and specifically in order for your vote to count. And I like what you said. There's so many different ways to vote. November 5th is just the last day to vote.
Yes. So again, that means that we have, if it's not straight ticket, we have to bubble in every single area. On the nonpartisan side. Okay, yes, got it. So we encourage you to take Justice Bolden's words to heart. Remember, your vote is your voice, and it's a serious matter. Stay informed. Listen, on behalf of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Eta Iota Omega chapter of Inkster, Michigan, we bring you this voter education moment. We just thank you all so much for tuning in. And thank you so much, Justice Bolden, for giving us this moment of importance. And that's the name of our show. It's Vote. It's a serious matter. Thank you again. And thank you to our audience for joining us for this impactful conversation. We'll see you next time on this podcast.